So we're learning the Maamar Choviv Adam, and what page is 275? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, although I don't know where we were because yesterday I was on the bus. So
Avram, do you have the exact place we're at? Avram, I don't hear you. You're on mute. You're still on mute, Avram. What did you say?
Well, over the page, had a note here which says Shlemus Segal.
Right.
We talked about.
So that's a page.
A good place to start, I think.
Yeah. Okay, but that's page 275.
275, yeah.
But give us.
Gimel.
No. Parent Gimel, we already began yesterday. We're waiting.
Yeah, it's in Gimel. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 down, 6 lines down in Gimel.
Okay, we're at the words v'chein. We're at the words v'chein lahadzdik es atzmoi bekamei minei tainos. After the acronym Vav Chav Hey Gimel Ukahai Gavna. You see that acronym, Yetzer? Vav Chav Hey Gimel?
No, but I'm going to look for it. I see where Abraham was referring behind the Shlemus HaMochin.
You got to go down. We're further. Go down a few lines.
Okay. The Chacham Bal HaNisayin, the Chachmas Amdal, the second.
Three lines below, further.
Okay, Nefesh.
Ukahai Gavna. After he says V'osher, Ugdula, V'choved, Ukahai Gavna is the acronym. Chof Hey Gimel.
Okay.
V'chein lahatzdik. We're talking about when Got it. We're talking about someone, Yaini, we're talking about someone who uses their seichel as a subordinate justification for their behavior. So this is what we call seichel shebe midos. The midah is the ikar, is primary, and seichel is subordinate. And the Rebbe gives an example. Someone finds justification for what he's doing, with all kinds of resolutions, with all kinds of, arguments, lahafoich, b'schus atzmoi, to find himself meritorious in what he's doing. So he justifies what he's doing, v'lo al pi ha'Torah. And his arguments are not based on Torah, ki litoin b'chol hatainos l'schus l'zakus esatzvei. Rather, to use arguments and positions to justify and say, l'zakos, what I am doing, I'm right. Umidoisov hein chazokos v'tkifes b'yoser, and his midos are very passionate. He's very determined. At what I'm doing, I'm 100% right. Not 99.9, 100%. Whatever he desires and wants, he wants with great tokif, with great passion. And whatever he doesn't want, he has the same adverse feeling to what he doesn't want, with great passion. In other words, he's an extremist. This is a description, of an extreme character. And he says in Yiddish, Das was the Nefesh Bahamis will, this that the Nefesh Bahamis wants, will sehr stark. He wants it very passionately, very strongly. Und das, was will nicht, and this that the Nefesh Bahamis doesn't want, will nicht mit a teikav. He doesn't want it with a passion. And why is this? Who lefish ha-Nefesh Bahamis be'etzem uhuseh koyach ha-masaveh. So the Rebbe introduces here a very important point. what is Moshe, the essence of the Nefesh Bahamis? And you know, when we began learning, and Yaini was with us from the very beginning, I remember it was his question, and maybe a few others, what's the difference between the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh Bahamis? A classical question. Before you learn Chabad Hasidus, you're really not aware of this concept of Bahamis. It's mentioned in different ways in the Sfarim before, but not the way the Alter Rebbe writes it and explains it. And it's the Alter Rebbe's introduction to Nefesh Bahamis is a chidush. Not a chidush in the very core that you have something in there that drives you to animalistic, desires. But the mechanism and the philosophy and all the details that go along Nefesh Bahamis is Chabad Chassidus, is chidush. But the question is, what's the difference between that and the Yetzer Hara? Right? In the Gemara, we have Yetzer Hara. So we explained many times that the Nefesh Bahamis isn't just the practical aspect of inclination. Yetzer Hara is already an inclination. That's the meaning of the word. The bad inclination. In other words, I'm already inclined to do something bad. The question that one has to ask himself is, what makes me inclined towards bad? And this is the Alter Rebbe's insight into the concept called Nefesh Bahamis. It's the drive that makes the inclination. So practically, they're like synonyms. In day-to-day conversation, someone who learns the Tanya, regardless of who he is, will interchange between Nefesh Bahamis and Yetzer Hara. But when you study more deeply, you understand that the cause of the Yetzer Hara is the Nefesh Bahamis. So the question now is, what is the essence of the Nefesh Bahamis? In other words, the essence of the Yetzer Hara is inclination towards Ra. That's the essence. One second, Yisra. I need you to understand this. This, what I'm teaching you now, is fundamental. The essence of the Yetzer Hara is already an inclination. I want to do bad. Or the Yetzer Tov is, I'm inclined to do good. That is the essence of each. So, what does this mean? That means that both Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov are already a tziyur, right? Yetzer, from the word tziyur. What does a tziyur mean? A picture, a formation, an inclination. The Nefesh Bahamis is the drive that makes the computer work so that we are able to have now this class. If not for the drive, this would never happen. Once there is a drive, a chip inside, what comes about is what comes about. Nevertheless, so what we know so far is that the Nefesh is a drive. The question is, what is the content of this drive? So you'll say, the content of the Nefesh Bahamis is a drive towards animalism, a very behavioral animalistic approach, and the drive towards Moshe, towards goodness, is driven by a drive to be more holy. But the Rebbe adds over here another very important point, that the real essence of the Nefesh Bahamis, not Nefesh Elokis, is Koach HaMesaveh. Koach HaMesaveh, Hillel, means the power of lust, for the word ta'ava. Lust, passion. But we mean a passion and a lust for whatever it lusts. It doesn't mean only sexual things. Whatever it lusts, whatever it desires, it does with a passion. That is Nefesh Bahamis. It's that energy, and it's that motor that fuels the Yetzer Hara. So again, don't make the mistake and say, oh, the Nefesh Bahamis wants one thing, sexual lust. That's not true. That's also part of it. It can want honor lust, pleasure lust, greatness lust, and even spiritual lust, where a person won't give away their own spiritual quests for another Jew. That's also a taiva. It's a holier taiva, but it's also a taiva. And the Rebbe is going to now explain, I think, no, he's not, but in different discourses, it's explained, it says there's a verse, Verav tvuos bekoyach shoyer. An abundance of wheat is created when you use the power of an ox. When it comes to a field, and you plow the field with an ox pulling the plow, you reap lots of wheat, lots of produce. Imagine you had a little mule schlepping the plow. First of all, it'll probably drop dead. Even if it can drop dead, it'll barely produce any, because it doesn't have any koyach. But when it comes to shoyed, an animal is stark, is large, is big, and it schleps the plow, it gives you an abundant amount of tevuah. And that's what the pasuk says. Verav tevuos, an abundance of tevuah, bekoyach shoyed, through the power of a shoyer. Says Chassidus that the Nefesh Bahamis is verav tevuos bekoyach shoyed, the abundant passion, intense passion. And this drives the Nefesh Bahamis to get, this drives the Yetzer Hara, as I said earlier, to get what it wants, and simultaneously, whatever it doesn't want to do, it does with an absolute rejection and extreme. Yetzer, it's your turn now.
Okay, I want to make sure that I understand the difference between the Yetzer Hara and the Nefesh Bahamis by asking a question, and before you answer the question, I'll say the question, then I'll explain the question.
Go ahead.
So the question is thus: did Adam Harishon have a Nefesh Bahamis before Chet Eitz Hadas? Meaning, I had always understood that the Yetzer Hara, what we call the Yetzer Hara, was something external to Adam the Chava until the Chet of Eitz Hadas, and then afterwards that Yetzer Hara became incorporated within them, so that today we see our drive to Ra as something internal. It's part of us, although it really is external, but we lost that distinction after the Chet Eitz Hadas. You understand the question?
Yes, I do.
So did Adam Harishon have the Nefesh Bahamis before the Chet Eitz Hadas?
Okay. So first of all, thank you for the question. It's a good question. I don't recall ever, being asked, well, I don't recall this question being phrased the way you phrased it, although the response and the idea is discussed in Chassidus. And the answer is that Adam Harishon, as a human being, by nature, had a Nefesh Bahamis. Why? Because a Nefesh Bahamis is the drive in potentia. What he didn't have, and what you're referring to, is the Yetzer Hara. That's why I'm saying the Yetzer Hara is the manifestation, the inclination already. That didn't take place until what? Until he ate from the tree. But the tree, so the Chet Eitz Hadas took the Nefesh Bahamis that he was born with, because everyone is born with it. So as soon as you say someone is born, he has a Nefesh Bahamis. Every human being. The difference is that the Nefesh Bahamis pre-sin was going to use its passion for good. Came along the Chet, the sin, and took it for a ride into the bad. Is that clear?
Yeah, and now we say that Nara, man is evil min Nara. Then he's born.
Yetzer Lev Ha'adam Ram Ne'urav. That's what you're citing. So the Christians, lahavdil, they use it for their belief that you're born with sin unless you believe in who, you're not atoned for. We don't see it that way. We see it that Hashem gave every person a choice, and part of the choice is good or bad. And without refinement, the world we live in drags us into the world of evil and bad and stupidity. And that's why at Bar and Bas Mitzvah, when there is what we call the Hisgalut, the revelation of the Neshama, because the Alter Rebbe already says and brought that at birth, a baby, an infant, has a Neshama. At birth. But that neshama...
40 days after conception.
Yeah, I was going to say. Exactly. And by the way, in Kabbalah and in the Svarim it says that from the moment of conception there is already some form of a neshama. What you were quoting is like more halachic, 40 days after conception. What about the first 40 days? When two Jewish people are in union... What do they create? Crackers? Peanuts? What are they creating? They're creating a Jewish neshama. They're given the gift when the woman is able to have a physical child. But even without that, as we discussed in the other share a few days ago, there's always a creation of a spiritual offspring when there's a union. But going back to what we're learning here, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that the Koyach HaMesaveh, the power of desire, the burning passion, this is unique to the Nefesh Bahamis. And by the way, that's why that's why they sinned. Let me explain this. If he wouldn't have the Koyach HaMesaveh, there wouldn't be a sin. There would never be hate. It's only, you understand, sin comes if you have a drive. The drive is the Koyach HaMesaveh. That Koyach HaMesaveh that is given to Adam is what caused him to desire the fruit. And there's another element that's mentioned in the Holy Svarim. He looked. What does it say in Bereshis? Hillel Vayar Kitoiv Ho'etz L'maychol. Vayar. Until he looked, there was no eating of the fruit. But Vayar, when he looked, the process began. And the Svarim, the Holy Svarim explain this is the idea of Re'iyah, of how important it is to be careful what we see with our eyes. Because what we see with our eyes creates the next step. Yes, Yaini.
So, I mean, it's so interesting, and we, Elliot just brought it up also. It's so interesting because, I remember in Yeshiva learning about the whole Eitz Hadas thing, and this brings a totally different perspective to everything because, they talk about, how the woman, she made Adam, Chava made Adam eat from the Eitz Hadas, and she
right.
made him sin and this and that, and you get this idea in your mind that it's something we can't understand. Meaning it's like an alternate universe, right? And before, how can we relate to such a thing? But I think what the Rebbe here is doing is putting it into an idea or a concept that it's yom yom.
It's yom yom, exactly. Exactly. That's very well said. It's yom yom. Eitz Hadas isn't 5,000 years ago. It's yom yom. What do our eyes see? Where's desire coming from? Why do you think the Rebbe came out with a campaign that children, especially young children, shouldn't, see non-kosher animals and have those things around their beds like bears, teddy bears, and things like that? You think he had nothing what to do but to talk about it. But it's all based on these concepts of how careful the eyes, and you don't want a child from a young age to associate with something not just secular, but contrary, the opposite of Kedusha. As it is, one goes through life seeing, animals like that, and this also opens up the whole discussion, which I don't want to go into now, having dogs in your house. People have always asked me, what's wrong to have a dog in your house? A lot of different people. I'm not taking sides. I'm just saying that you have to know that you have a dog which isn't a kosher animal in your house. So if you want to have that, fine. But just know, I'm just saying there is something on the mystical level. I'm not talking now about halachically. Of course, you're allowed to have a dog in your house. You want to have a dog, have a dog. There's the mystical element that we're sensitive to, and this is part of the entire idea of kosher animals, what your eyes see, expression, exposure to those things. Let's go back to the text here. Let's see what he says about koyach hamasava. A koyach van glusten. The Rebbe says in Yiddish, koyach hamasava is in Yiddish the power. Hebrew, that's Hebrew. Glusten. To glust means to lust, to desire. And since in Kabbalistic words, the koyach of Nefesh Bahamis comes from the lower levels of the translucent klipa, we're just going to leave it at that for now. The koyach of the Nefesh Bahamis is enclosed, is invested be avius. You know what avius means? Of fatness. Fat. Of is fat. Or in Yiddish, grobkeit. How do you like that word? Avram. Grobkeit. Grob means fat. Kite, how do I translate? Grobkeit means, how would you say it, Yoni? Grobkeit.
Fat. I mean, but it's not just
no,
fat.
it's not just fat. No, it's earthliness or corporeality. Maybe corporeality. What? Coarse. Yeah. Yeah. Since the drive is now is invested in coarseness, he's always looking to satiate and pleasure the body. Heathenism. And this is what the person is immersed in. I really want to pleasure my body. That's the concept of Nefesh Bahamis in its potency used for shtuyot. Now look what he says. The kasher Yetzer Hara Isser. You see how? Look at the language. And when the Yetzer Hara malbishes koyach hamasava shel Nefesh Bahamis, it's malbish, Moshe. It takes the nefesh, the koyach hamasava, the drive, and it dresses it up. Malbish. It dresses it up in Ra, Yetzer Hara. That's when he starts descending, God forbid, from step to step. He becomes completely, totally corporeal. He has no comprehension. And he's not drawn at all to anything intellectual. It's just about pleasure. And when you try to talk to them sense, it goes over their head. It means nothing to them. Why? Because they've become one piece of heathenism. But that happens when the Yetzer Hara takes the koyach hamasava and it dresses up the koyach hamasava of the Nefesh Bahamis into its Ra, Yetzer Hara. And since the divine intent with creating the Nefesh Bahamis, Hisha Nefesh Bahamis Yizbarer What's the purpose? The purpose is that the Nefesh HaBamish that was now dragged into Ra by the Yetzer Hara should be refined. V'hainu shakoyach hamasav shebenefesh HaBamish yishtamish loy la'avodas Hashem. What we want is that this Nefesh HaBamish, who's so strong in lust and desire, should schlep itself out with its passion, with its drive from the schmutz, and say the same chayas, the same passion that I had for that cheeseburger and that disgusting movie and whatever I was doing and drinking in the college, the dorms, I'm going to now use that at a Hasidic Farbrengen to awaken my neshama and to love more Hashem and dance for Hashem and thank Hashem. And when one will see that person, they'll see, this is a real Nefesh HaBamish who has gone through transformation from the negative to the positive. So it's not that you drop your passion, you transform your passion. And he says, through learning Torah, become mitzvah, through mitzvah, tefillah, tefillah through davening. And the Rebbe says in Yiddish, so we should get it. Glusten zu lernen, lust for learning. Glusten tona mitzvah, lust for doing a mitzvah. And lust for davening mitachayis. V'habirur v'zichuch yi aydei nefesh elikis. So here's the question, how do I accomplish this? The Yetzer Hara is schlepping my Nefesh HaBamish into its stupidity and evil. And you're telling me that the objective is that this Nefesh HaBamish, who's so full of passion, should transform and learn and daven and do mitzvahs with a passion. The answer is that's where the Nefesh Elikis kicks in. That's where the neshama that Hashem gave every Yid kicks in. And Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh HaBamish, the actual refinement will happen through the neshama, the nefesh, and since they're very opposites, there has to be an intermediary. You know, Rabbi Grossman, when he went into the Nachlat Shiva bars in Yerushalayim, right near Meir Sharim and Geul, right? And he schlepped out people and he spoke to them, right? It's like Nefesh HaBamish and Nefesh Elikis. How do they talk to each other? You're in a bar, the disco music is blasting, the tznius is outrageous, and Rabbi Grossman with his top hat and his frock and his beard is there. And he wasn't there because he wanted to indulge in a bar. He was there because he wanted to schlep out and elevate, and because he was focused. So although hafchim zeh b'zeh, they're opposites, there needs to be a mamutza. In order to talk, in order to get the Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh HaBamish to talk to each other, you need an intermediary. Says the Rebbe, v'habamutza b'neim and Nefesh HaSichlis. Going back to what we began in the beginning of Maamar. The B'mutza, the intermediary Moshe, that is able to do what we call negotiations, peace negotiations, is the Nefesh HaSichlis, the intellectual, rational soul. It says, hey, if you drink too much, you're going to get a disease, and you're going to die, and you're going to be a nothing. So it keeps on clopping with seichel. What do you want of your life? You want to make something of your life, or you want to be a bar person? And over, and you explain, and you use this muscle, and you talk. You know, the Rebbe told Rabbi Yaakov Yehuda Hecht, J.J. Hecht, you know, people would come to him, going back to the 50s and 60s, 70s, and, you know, there was a post-Holocaust generation. And a lot of the kids, were going through the 60s, the counterculture revolution. And there was boys and girls and Yidden and non-Jews. And there was a whole mishachts, a great, assimilation. And Rabbi Hecht had weighed on him, so they came to him, the mother and the father. Rabbi, help me! My son wants to marry a shiksa. Rabbi, help me! What do I do? Right? And it weighed on him. So he went to the Rebbe. He had an open dialogue with the Rebbe. And he cried his heart out to the Rebbe. He says, it's overwhelming. I don't know what to tell them. And the Rebbe said to him like this, keep on speaking, keep on talking, keep on explaining. And you never know what the right word goes out from your mouth into the people that are listening. And just several weeks ago, Pesach, I was in Hallandale for Yom Tov. Someone comes over to me who makes the announcement and reads the Hayoim Yoim after the second minyan, I think. And he actually reads it very loudly and slowly explains it, regular person, not the rabbi. And he says to me, I have a letter that Rabbi Hecht wrote to my mother in 1983, 82, when I went into the army. A 3-page letter where he asks my mother all about me, because my mother, who knew him, came to him and she was very concerned. I'm going to the army. What's going to be with me as a Jew? So that's the type of person and issues that he dealt with throughout his lifetime. And, and at a certain point, he saw how it was like, all over. And he went to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, just keep on talking. You don't play God. You keep on explaining and feeling and crying and laughing and working with them, and the Eibishter will do his. Why do I say this? The Rebbe says here that Nefesh Bahamis and Nefesh Elikis are opposite each other. Each one's going in a different direction. You need the Nefesh HaSichlis. Seichel, use the Seichel to explain and to talk, and again over, of course, with a love and a hiskarvus and a kiruv. But Seichel is such an element, is such an option that it kind of gives each side some slack, right? It says to Nefesh Bahamis, listen, you don't want to be an outrageous animal and a cuckoo because you're going to kill yourself and hurt yourself. So let's talk about a way of minimizing your drinking. Let's only drink once a week instead of every day. I don't know, whatever, And the Nefesh Elikis, we say, hey, you're very holy. You're very, but you got to deal with the issue here. How are we going to bring? So it gives each one some recipe of thought to be able to deal with the problem. Yes, Moshe.
So Rabbi Dalton, is the Nefesh HaSichlis, is it on the same? I guess I always thought that from learning Chassidus Chabad, we have the Nefesh Bahamis, which is the drive of the body, and the Nefesh Elokis, which is the element that wants to that goes into the body to and is the driving force that we should use the body, channel everything to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, mitzvahs, etc. So the question is the Nefesh. I'm still trying to understand. I guess my question is, I'm still trying to understand what is the Nefesh HaSichlis. I'm still not understanding, and I also don't understand. I always pictured the Nefesh Bahamis and the Nefesh Elokis is sort of on like a. There's like the mashal about the lave that the Tanya talks about, how the Nefesh Elokis is we're supposed to work, and we're supposed to have the Nefesh Elokis go and cover and sort of like, take over the heart, so to speak, as opposed to the opposite. So I'm still trying to understand what is the Nefesh HaSichlis and where is it sort of located amongst these other two.
Okay, what time is it now?
Now it's 3:15.
Okay, I would love to. I'm going to explain tomorrow because I have another share in 5 minutes, so I do have to get off. Good question. I'm going to try to come up with another way of explaining it, and hopefully it'll clarify it because it does need clarification. It needs clarification. Okay. Have a good day, everyone. Zeigazon. Take care. Bye bye.